Hi guys, thank you for picking up this second video. So at the end of the last video I left you on this screen and I asked you to create a thesis, basically a big idea, something hopefully that you feel a bit passionately about, that you can create a persuasive speech to persuade other human beings to agree with you. I want you to start with these words, "we have a moral duty too," and then finish it with an idea. And I gave you 5 potential ideas. So if you couldn't come up with one of your own, you must pick one of these 5, okay? We have a moral duty too, and then you can either write a speech that says we all have a moral duty to stand against racism, to protect our environment, to be kind, to protect the rights of members of the LGBTQ community, to eliminate homelessness in the UK. If you have your own idea, that is entirely fine. If you do not, you must use one of these 5, okay? Or if you just want one of these 5, great. If you do have your own idea, can you email it to your teacher and run it by them, just to make sure that you're not leading yourself into an area where it might be really hard to write a good speech. Okay, so the next bit then, now that we have a thesis, now that you have a big idea you're going to argue, we're just going to whack together a for and against table. As I say, this stage doesn't involve loads of planning or detail or research. This stage simply involves whacking down your ideas. So my statement, as you know, we have a moral duty to do everything we can to stand against child labour across the world. So all I'm going to do is just put down my initial ideas of why I think that. What is going on in the world that makes me think that we should end child labour? So first of all, I know that in Africa and India, in particular, there are high numbers of children working in dangerous jobs. Now, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head. In the next stage, I'm going to research that. But at the moment, I know there's a high number of children working in dangerous jobs. I know that the typical types of jobs are factory jobs. There's a lot of children work in the clothing industry, often producing clothes for us, Western consumers. The carpet industry, particularly in India, there's a lot of children who work in that industry, which is really terrible. There's also something called bonded labour, which basically is when, in a nutshell, children are more or less slaves because they are being required by wealthy individuals to pay off the debts of their family. So say their father got into debt with somebody, the child has to work until the debt is paid off. But the debt never gets paid off. So basically there's a form of slavery, which is just horrifying to think that children have their whole future stolen. In addition to that, I think that we have so much wealth in the Western world. We have so much money in developed countries that could be used in order to provide education for children around the world. And again, that's something I can research more thoroughly later. And I think we have a moral duty to protect, to safeguard all children, not just the children who are born in this country, but all children all over the world. So as you can see, all I've done is I've jotted down 5 ideas about why I feel so strongly about ending child labour. The next thing I do then is exactly the same, but I do it in the against column. So now I'm trying to put myself in someone else's perspective. Somebody who doesn't agree with me, who doesn't think that we have a moral duty to stand against child labour. What reasons would they give? Well, I imagine people would say things like, it doesn't happen in this country. That it's not an issue that's relevant to our lives. But of course, we're the ones who get the benefits of it. We're the ones who have cheap things we can buy, cheap clothes and such like, as a consequence of children working abroad. People sometimes feel powerless to make a difference. People feel that actually, because it's happening in different countries and because we're only sort of small voices, people might feel that they're powerless to make a real difference. So therefore they use it as a reason why they can't do it. So there are just my initial ideas. That's my first bit of my invention stage. I've got ideas of, beyond just saying child labour is bad, I've now got some reasons and more additional thoughts that I've jotted down. So what I'd like you to do for your thesis, I'd like you to do exactly the same. To jot down your initial ideas, your initial reasons why. So say, for example, you're going, we all have a moral duty to stand against racism. Why? What are your initial ideas, your initial reasons why we should all stand against racism? And then what are the reasons someone might say against that? Likewise, if your thesis statement, we all have a moral duty to do more to protect the environment, why? What are the reasons? Don't need facts, don't need research, just whack down your ideas in a table. Please pause the video, do that, and then restart the video once you think you've got a few ideas. Okay guys, so hopefully you've now got a table that looks a bit like mine, that's got a few notes and ideas in it. But of course that's not enough, is it? We cannot write a whole speech based on the fact we've got a few ideas. We have to actually know what we're talking about. And that's when our ethos, logos and pathos come back into it. So we can take our initial shorthand plan and make it far more detailed by thinking in terms of ethos, logos and pathos. We can think more about our audience and what we want to try and say to them. Logos is probably the most important thing to plan. This is where you can really research, where you can get on the internet and look up whatever your topic is and try to find out some facts, some information, some quotations from people, great figures in the field. And obviously you can think about your pathos. What emotions do we want to appeal to, and how will we do that? So the next stage of invention, I suggest, is to use a triangle and to use these words logos, ethos, logos and pathos to plan your next stage of ideas. So if we take logos first of all, I'm going to go, all I need to do for that is to go onto the internet. So I can go onto Google. So I simply go onto Google and I type in the word child labour because that's my topic. Now immediately I've got a hit here from Wikipedia. It gives me a definition. Child labour refers to the exploitation of children through any form of work that deprives them of their childhood, interferes with their ability to attend school and is mentally, physically, socially or morally harmful. So that's a useful definition point straight away. Got another definition here. And then I can scan down and I can see I've got the ILO, which I think is a reputable organisation, or I've got UNICEF here, which again I think is a really reputable organisation, and I trust that as a site where I can click on it and see if I can find some facts. And it says here, look, recent global estimates based on data of UNICEF, the ILO and the World Bank indicate that 168 million children aged 5 to 17 are engaged in child labour. 168 million, shocking, isn't it? So I can go back to my plan and I can make a note of that. So I can just, under the logos section, I can put 168 million children in child labour. Now, I see you could write more extensive notes. I'm just sort of trying to show you the process. And I can just read through that. And I can just find the facts. I can find information. I can copy down statements. I mustn't just copy and paste the whole page because that would be pointless. But anything I think, oh, that's really useful, I'm going to write that down. You may or may not use it, but it's useful information. And then obviously I can go back to Google, I can come off that site, I can look at another one. This looks like a really interesting article, child labour in the fashion supply chain. Lots of us buy clothes, don't we, that are made potentially by children. Children who might be working in horrifying conditions so that we can buy cheap clothes. And I've got some images and all sorts here. So again, I would read that whole article and I would pick out information, and all I would do is every time I find something I think is interesting, be it a fact, a statement, a quote, I would go back to my triangle and add a little note to it. In terms of ethos, your speech is going to be aimed at people of your age, yeah? Because we're going to be aiming at young people, because young people are the future. Young people have got the power to make the world a better place. So young people tend to be aspirational, optimistic, and they tend to care. Sadly, as people get older, we get more set in our ways and more concerned about things that maybe are a bit self-centred. So when we're talking to young people, we have the chance to appeal to the fact that young people tend to be hopeful and they actually care about other people and they care about making the world a better place. So we don't want to be too doom and gloom. It is a really terrible subject, but I want to offer some hope to young people that actually they can make a difference. Now, the pathos, the emotional appeal, again, I can use my articles for that, where it tells me that there are many girls in countries like India and Bangladesh who work for very low prices and bought it and fake, they're told lies. I can add that because that's a bit of emotional appeal, isn't it? So children are lied to and exploited. Emotional language there. So as well as having the facts, it's 168 million children. I could potentially also, on one of these websites, The Guardian or the UNICEF website, I could find some anecdotes, some real children who have suffered, and I can write out their story. Because sometimes knowing that 168 million children are engaged in child labour is horrifying. But reading about one child who has had their childhood stolen because they work in this industry can be really a lot more emotional. So I don't want to just know the big picture facts, I want to know the details of the individuals who have suffered. Okay, so can you please use this process for your speech? So your thesis, we have a moral duty too, whatever you wrote. And can you just draw this diagram in the middle of a page, leave yourself loads of space because you're going to find loads of information, and spend some time on Google, researching and reading, finding out the facts, finding out the pathos, finding out some anecdotes about individuals. Some of this you will use, some of it you won't. But the better your research now, the easier you'll find it to write your speech in the future. So that's the end of this session. You can obviously go back through anything you need to, but your job is research. A page full of information, bursting with stories, quotes, facts, all about your topic, so that you can use that later. If you start researching your topic and you can't find anything, you might want to consider changing it because you don't want to make your own life hard. As always, if you're stuck, please email your teacher and we will help you. If you produce some work, send it to us and we will help you. But it is essential that you do the research because you won't be able to do your persuasive speeches without it. Thanks, guys. Bye.